siap menjawab tantangan global dan tuntutan zaman dengan memberikan sarana dan prasarana yang modern dan berbasis teknologi. Hal ini tentunya mendukung UMP menjadi World Class University. Guna menunjang soft skill akademik dan non-akademik, mahasiswa UMP diberikan pelatihan keahlian, BES, SMART, dan SUCCESS. Mahasiswa juga difasilitasi dengan unit kegiatan mahasiswa atau UKM dan lembaga kemahasiswaan. Dengan mengedepankan kebutuhan pendidikan untuk menjawab tantangan global, UMP hadir sebagai prioritas Anda dalam memilih perguruan tinggi. Jadi tunggu apa lagi? Anda tidak perlu ragu untuk melanjutkan studi di UMP, karena UMP hadir untuk Anda yang muda, unggul, modern, dan islami. Universitas Muhammadiyah Purwokerto telah mencatat secara panjang untuk mencapai unggul, modern, dan islami. Berawal dari Institut Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan IKIP Muhammadiyah Purwokerto, UMP hingga di usia saat ini makin mendunia. UMP beralamatkan di Jalan Raya Dukuhwalu Purwokerto, strategis dari fasilitas publik, baik itu tempat wisata budaya dan sejarah hingga alat transportasi yang memadai. Salah satu pertimbangan memilih UMP tidak lain karena memiliki 11 fakultas dan 38 program studi. Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Fakultas Agama Islam, Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis, Fakultas Teknik dan Sains, Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Psikologi, Fakultas Farmasi.
Namanya Michelle Darusman, bukan Bu? Mau nyoba-nyoba enggak? Ini sudah gabung. Berarti kalau nyapa di depan.
Fakultas Sastra.
Halo?
Udah join? Mau nyapa? Berarti di depan
Fakultas
kamera.
Hukum,
I can't hear you. Oh,
Good evening, Michelle. Hello.
hi, hello.
This is me, Noor.
It's Noor.
Great to
Hi,
see
how are you?
Oh my God.
can't see
Finally,
you.
we are here.
Yes, it's so nice to speak with you.
I
Although
really
I
hope that
can't-
you are doing great.
I'm doing well. How about you?
Oh, very good. Thank you so much.
Very, very good. And congratulations. I didn't realize you were having a family wedding on the weekend.
Yeah. But excuse me, I cannot hear your voice clearly.
Okay. I don't know.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
That's
It's
better?
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
How is it now? I've got my headset on. My speaker should be working.
Yes, it is very clear.
Okay. And am I meant to be seeing you? Because
Yes,
I don't see you now,
yes, I can see it.
but I can't see you.
Oh, you can't see me. Gimana nih, Mas? Ngobrolnya?
Oh, there
Yes.
you are.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. That's so great. Hello. Hello. Oh, it's
Yeah,
lovely to see
after
you.
such a long time, we corresponded through
I
email,
know. It's
WhatsApp. Now
nice to see you.
we can see each other.
Yes.
Me.
And is my screen. I thought if you don't mind, when I'm sharing my screen, I'm
Yes.
going to go off video, and then I'll come back on video again for the Q&A.
That's okay, I think.
That's okay?
Yeah.
And you can see me okay now, or does it need to be brighter?
Yes.
It's okay.
So you want to try to do the screen
I
sharing?
just wanted to practice to make sure
Oh,
it goes
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right, so here's share screen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's okay.
Yes, it's very clear.
Okay, so so you can see the screen okay?
Yes.
All right, good.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out how I turn off my camera when I'm sharing the screen. Oh, here, okay. So if I stop my video, so now you can't see me, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's what I'll do if that's okay. And then when it's time for Q&A, I'll put the video on again
Yes,
and
exactly.
stop the share. Okay. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
So maybe we will start right now. Everyone?
Sure.
Yeah.
So what is the time now? Do you want to wait until,
Yeah, we
oh, it's already 10 minutes too. Okay.
yeah, 10 minutes earlier.
Okay. Is that better with you can see me better now, I think.
Yes.
The light is better. How many participants do you have signed up?
Oh, exactly. We have around 90 participants, but
Oh,
maybe
wow, great.
yeah, they are still trying to log in.
People come and go. Okay.
Yes, yeah. We will wait for them.
Yes.
Vamos.
Just okay. Hello, Michelle.
Hello.
It's nice to meet you. It's really
Nice to meet
pleasure.
you. I
Yeah,
can't see
it's
you.
Amar Rizky John Zinta, my student. Yeah.
Okay, I can't see you
Yeah.
on camera.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there you are. I can see you now. So, how can I refer to you? Amaris?
Amar
Amar,
Rizky.
Amar,
Amar. You can call
Amar.
me Amar.
Amar. Okay, Amar.
Okay.
I'll call you up. It's easier for me. Thank you. And you're going to moderate for me later.
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe I will be reading a little information from you
About
before the presentation, and then you can continue your screen share.
start the presentation.
Yes.
Fantastic. That sounds great.
I'm a little bit nervous now. Pardon
No,
me.
no, I'm always nervous too.
Yeah.
And it's very early for you.
Okay. It's really okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Should I start now? Okay. Well, we will be starting now.
Okay.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To Honorable the Dean of Faculty of Letters, Mr. Ambar Pujiatno, to the Honorable the Vice Dean of Faculty of Letters, Mrs. Sulasih Nurhayati, to Honorable all the lecturers of Faculty of Letters, and all the beloved participants who are coming to today's webinar. Let us praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who always gave us His mercy and grace to us, and also blessing and greetings always we devote to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a webinar on Literature Awards for the New Emerging Writers with the theme Get Ready for Becoming the Emerging International Writer. My name is Amariski Juansita, and today I will be serving as your moderator for today's webinar. Before we start, I would like to read the sequence of today's webinar. The first one is opening, the second is speech, the third is presentation, the fourth is question and answer session, and the last is closing. The first session is opening. Let's open today's webinar by saying Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. All right. The second session is speech. The speech will be given by the Vice Dean of Faculty of Letters, Mrs. Sulasi Nurhayati. To Mrs. Sulasi Nurhayati, the time is yours.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wa syukurillah wa la haula wa la quwwata illa billah. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Allahumma shalli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Amma ba'du. Indeed, this is an honor for me to give or to deliver this welcoming speech at this webinar. And first of all, I would like to especially welcome and express my gratitude to my new friend, Michelle Kadersman. Thank you very much for being our guest speaker. I hope you are doing really great today and ready to present the best practices of you as the international writer. I would like also thank to the Dean of Fakultas Sastra, Faculty of Letters, Mr. Ambar Bujiatno, SSM, who has given us a very good opportunity to host this webinar today. My thanks also go to my lovely student, Mbak Amariski Juansita, who is willing to become the moderator for the webinar today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes.
It's a pleasure.
All of the lecturers, the students and participants, wherever you are in this world, I would like to thank. All right. This webinar is one of the international seminars Fakultas Sastra or Faculty of Letters regularly host, besides the other two, Kotaval and Isoling. This is very special. This seminar is very special because this is hosted within the pandemic. But I believe that the pandemic is actually not a current time where we have to stay away from people, from the coronavirus, make social or physical distances. But it is actually a very good blessing too Allah has given us. So this is not a current time when we have to isolate ourselves from doing the positive things in our life. And I believe also I have seen that many new writers have appeared during the pandemic. So writing skills within the pandemic, if I may say, have been, increasing very exponentially. Do you agree with me, Mbak Amar?
Yes.
Yes. And are you ready to become an international writer too?
I hope so.
Yes.
Maybe I will be the one.
Yes. But talking about the international writer is our great theme today, for the webinar today, I mean. At least there are two questions. The first is about talent. About talent. I mean, talent, do you believe that talent is a gifted? Some questions may appear from this topic or talent. Is talent enough to give us chances to become a good writer? Are we talented enough? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe there are many questions dealing with the talent that perhaps more or less we do not realize that we are talented enough in writing, for instance. One may say that I was born to sing. One may say that I was born to dance, for instance. But how about writing? Do you have a talent in writing? how good do we understand about the talent inside ourselves? So perhaps Michelle Kadersman will give her opinion about it too within her presentation later. And the second one is the language. So as you want to be an international writer, English language is the important or maybe the crucial one we have to master. So if you want to be an international writer, remember that you have to write in English. And perhaps for Indonesian or new writers, this is a challenge. This may be a challenge, another challenge that they have to cope with. So we are ready to be the international writer someday. So I will not take long for this speech. In this nice occasion, I would like to declare that this webinar is opened by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So dear audience, get ready for becoming the international writers. Enjoy the presentation. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. All right, thank you, Mrs. Sulasi Nurhayati, for the speech. And now we are moving on to the next session, which is our main event today. So the third session is presentation from the speaker. And today we will be having a fabulous award-nominated novel author from Canada who will be sharing some tips and tricks to be a good international writer, Michelle Kadersman. Now, before we get into the presentation, I will be giving you a little information about our speaker today. So, Michelle Kadersman is a middle grade novel author of Pajama Press, Canada, and she spent a lot of time growing up in Melbourne, Australia, and also has lived in 3 cities in Indonesia, which are Surabaya, Jakarta, and Bali. And now she is living in Canada for 20 years with her family. And then her 3 novels, The Theory of Hummingbird, which was released in 2017, and then Girl of Southern Sea, which released in 2019, and her latest released novel, Music for Tigers, which was released in April 2020, are receiving a lot of honors and awards, such as Canadian Governor General's Award, Ontario Library Association Forest of Reading Awards, and also American Junior Library Guild Gold Star Selection. And she is also a founder of a former literacy charity named Raising Readers for 12 years, and also worked with Scotiabank Children's Prize. All right, without taking much any time longer, let's welcome our guest today, Michelle Kadersman. The time is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. I hope everyone can see me and hear me okay. Give me the thumbs up. So I'm so happy to be here, and I have to say a special thank you to Bu Noor and Pak Pujiyatno for inviting me, the Dean of the Faculty of Letters at UMP, for inviting me for this special honor and inviting me to participate in this webinar. I'm very excited to speak to you all, and I'm talking to you from Toronto, Canada, where it's still Tuesday night. I know for you it's Wednesday morning. So selamat pagi. I'm not going to speak any Bahasa. I'm going to speak all English. But wherever you are in the world anyway, welcome. I'm so happy you joined me. And I'm going to share my screen and do the presentation. So I'm going to go off camera and share screen, and then, but don't worry, we'll have lots of time after the PowerPoint. I'll come back on camera, and Amar will read me your questions. So we'll have lots of time at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to set up my PowerPoint now. I'm going to put it on slide view. Here we go. Okay, and I'm gonna sign off my camera now, and I'll see you after. Okay, so again, Thank you so much for inviting me tonight. I'm gonna, sorry, my PowerPoint is not seeming to work. Can you still hear me?
Yes,
I don't know if I've lost you. I'm just trying to move my my screen and it doesn't seem. Here we go. Okay, now it's working.
All right, it's working.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so tonight, as you heard, my name is Michelle Katarusman, and I'm an internationally published author, children's author. Uh, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my personal history, my writing career, and my tips for emerging authors, because I believe I have some very keen emerging authors in the audience. And as I mentioned, we'll have plenty of time for questions after the presentation. But I also want to start by congratulating all of you who have participated in the flash fiction competition. And I'm looking forward to reading the submissions from the top 3 entries and providing my comments and feedback on your writing. I know that you ran a competition at the school, so I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Okay, so we're going to begin with my personal history. So I thought, of course, I would begin with my Indonesian history. And here's the Kadarusman family. This is a photo of my father. He's the little one standing on the table. And this photo would be taken in around 1936. And my family are originally from Tasikmalaya in West Java, but this photo would be in Jakarta, where my father was born. And my grandfather, there, he's pictured with the glasses. His name was Adang Kadarusman, and he would go on to become a very well-known figure in what was to become the newly independent Indonesia. After Indonesia proclaimed its independence on the 17th of August, 1945, as you all know, which we're coming up to a very important anniversary, on September 11 that year, my grandfather was one of the founders of Radio Republic Indonesia, which was the country's first and only independent broadcasting voice at the time. And this event happened at my family's home in Menteng, Jakarta. My father, Ebert Kadarusman, was very proud of his father's legacy. So after high school, my father, Ebert, he's pictured there with the guitar. He was chosen to participate in an Australian government-funded program called the Colombo Project that sponsored students from Indo-Pacific countries like Indonesia and funded their undergraduate studies in Australian universities. And this is where my parents met at the University of Adelaide in 1957. There's my mum. Her name is Judy, and she's Australian. She grew up in Adelaide and attended Adelaide University, and that's where she met my dad. And they fell in love and got married in 1959. So after university, my father went on to work for the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Commission in Melbourne. And for over 20 years, he broadcasted a popular radio program to Indonesia called Good Pagi, Selamat Morning. And he later hosted a popular television show on SCTV called Salam Chanda. So until he died in 2010, he was celebrated as a pioneer in Indonesian radio and television. He was known for saying, "It's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice," which is still a lovely thing for me to hear. So because the ABC studios were in Melbourne, that's where we grew up. And I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. I'm the baby. I'm the baby in my mother's arms there in that picture. And my brother and sisters are Valerie, Andre, Rani, and Julia. And we now live in all different parts of the world. My brother Andre lives in Kuala Lumpur. My sister Julia lives in Los Angeles. My mother and sister Rani still live in Melbourne. And my oldest sister Valerie lives outside Sydney. And despite these vast distances, we still are all very close, and we try and see each other as much as we can. So we grew up as English-speaking Aussies in Australia, but my dad was also very active in the Indonesian community in Australia. So we, you know, for our whole childhood, we were exposed to a lot of Indonesian culture through Indonesian association groups. But we also took lots of trips back to Indonesia all throughout our childhood. As a part of my father's work broadcasting from the ABC, it was important for him to have a connection with his cultural homeland. So we've often went back to Jakarta and to Bandung, where a lot of my family are still living in Bandung as well. So although we kind of grew up in both places, but very much steeped our schooling and language, we grew up as Australians. So because of that, you know, in my 20s, I really had a deep desire to kind of explore more properly my Indonesian identity. So in 1993, I got a job with Garuda Indonesian Airlines, and that allowed me to live in Bali, which was fantastic. Bali's a beautiful place to live. But after about a year, you know, I realized that it wasn't really a tourist's kind of view that I wanted to have. I really wanted to get deeper into my Javanese identity, my Javanese roots. So I moved to Jakarta, and after that I moved to Surabaya. And I actually ended up living in Indonesia for 7 years. And by the time I left, I had a Canadian husband and 2 small children. But by the time I left, I felt, you know, very much at home in Indonesia. And now living in Canada for 20 years, I think of both, you know, Australia and Indonesia as my original homelands. And I miss being in Indonesia very much. So, oh, and this is my family. This is my husband, Mark, who's a lawyer, and my daughter, Sophia, who's 24, and she's doing her postgraduate studies in Denmark. And my son, Teddy, who's 22, and he's just finishing an economics degree here in Toronto. So now you're up to date on who I am. You have a little snapshot of my personal history, which is kind of important to know because it always plays into my writing, who I am and my personal history. So there's a quick snapshot. So I always wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was a young child, I've always wanted to do it. And I always would scribble stories and poems, and, you know, I would fill many notebooks with lots of writing. But it wasn't until I moved to Canada in 2000 was when I actually started to try to become a published writer. And so the craft of writing and then trying to actually get published in writing are 2 quite different things. And it actually took me 10 years of trying to become published before I published my first stories in magazines for children. But, you know, this is not unusual. It's not unusual for many authors to have a long road to, you know, creating the craft, getting better at the craft, having many, many rejections. We'll talk a bit about that later. Rejections are a part of becoming a published writer. But for me, it took me a long time. It took me 10 years. And during this time, I also worked with books in different ways. As Amar mentioned in the introduction, I founded a literacy charity called Raising Readers. And so I worked in public schools, telling stories to children. And I also worked for a literary prize called the Scotiabank Giller Prize. So in those 10 years, I was also working with books in my day job, and I was also writing as well. But, you know, I attended many creative writing courses, writing groups, lectures, seminars. I did everything I could to become a better writer, and I still try to. But finally, my first stories were published in children's magazines, and the one you see on the screen now, Chickadee, is a Canadian children's magazine for around 8 to 12 years of age. And I published stories in Chickadee magazine from 2010 to 2014. So for 4 years, I did that. And it's a great way for emerging writers, because we all kind of always think about, you know, our first published work to be a novel, but it's really great way to sort of think about journals and magazines as your first point of entry, because there's many more opportunities, publishing opportunities in journals than usually to get a complete book contract. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about places that you would like to see your work. Do think about magazines as a first entry. So I published my first novel in 2014. It was called Out of It, and it was a book for YA, which we call young adult or teen readers. And it was a part of a series for reluctant readers. And I was, of course, so happy to have my first novel published. But I realized that young adult really wasn't my favorite genre. It wasn't the age group that I was really happy writing for. So I could have gone on to continue to write YA, but I really preferred to write middle grade fiction. So I went back to my middle grade projects, and I kept at it again. And I kept working for a couple of years before I started to get my middle grade novels published. And I'm happy to say that, you know, this is the genre that really did work for me, and that I have had success. And I'm very grateful for that. There's been many awards and honors that these books have received. So clearly, you know, there's a lot of different things you can write, but it's important to really think about what really you want to write, because often it will probably be the better writing for you. You know, often we can think commercially and think, well, if I write this kind of genre, it's going to easily get published. And that's fine, but still kind of listen to your heart and your real voice of what you want to achieve. And often that will be the most successful writing you'll have. And so I'm very grateful that I kept trying and trying, because it was these middle grade novels that I enjoy writing the most and that I have had the most success with. So I'll tell you a little bit about them. So The Theory of Hummingbirds was the first one I published in 2017. And it's about a girl who was born with a childhood disability, like I was. Alba in the story has a club foot, but she wants to participate in the school cross-country race. So it's really a story about self-acceptance and celebrating differences. Girl of the Southern Sea is a contemporary novel set in the slums of Jakarta, where a talented young girl, Nia, wants to become a writer in spite of poverty and her father's abandonment and grief over her mother's death. And it's really a tale of survival and fortitude as Nia struggles to have the chance to earn her education while she takes care of her brother and confronts the male figures in her life who try and determine her destiny. And throughout, Nia finds strength in crafting stories based on the Javanese legend of Dewi Kadita, the Queen of the Southern Sea. And Music for Tigers is set in the rainforests of Tasmania, Australia, and it's about a young girl who discovers her family harbor a secret sanctuary for endangered and extinct marsupials. And this is a coming of age story with a conservation twist. So while all my books have very different settings, they all return to the central theme of self-discovery and self-empowerment. They are the central themes that I find very meaningful, that are all hardwired into my stories. But the backdrops for my stories change quite dramatically. So my work in progress that I'm currently working on is again back in Indonesia, and it's drawing upon an experience that I had while living in Surabaya. My brother and I had the opportunity to liberate a captive orangutan that was held there in a restaurant. And so this experience has always kind of haunted me. I've always thought about it. And now, especially with the palm oil industry and the illegal exotic pet trade and environmental factors, it feels like a very timely story. Plus, I want to do research back in Indonesia. So the main character in this story is going to be biracial, like me. So I'll also be exploring sort of identity and belonging, another theme that I would like to explore. And I have a research grant from the Canada Council for the Arts to research this book. And my plans were to be in Borneo, actually, to research. But COVID-19, of course, has stalled those plans. But as soon as the world opens up again, I'll be heading back to Indonesia very happily to continue with this project. You know, and the other thing about this book is the character will be biracial, but she'll also come from a middle-class Indonesian background. It was important to me that I present a story from Indonesia that is not just one that is talking about poverty, that's also allows young readers to see a different version of life in Indonesia. You know, Indonesia has many faces, and I'd love to see more of its complex economic, social settings represented in children's literature. And I'm happy to say that in North America and elsewhere in the world, there's now a real appetite for diverse stories, for stories set in different countries outside of North America, so that Western children can really be able to see what it's like for kids, you know, who have different lives than theirs. So, and this wasn't always the case, but right now diverse books are very popular. So that makes me very happy. Okay, so we're coming to my tips. I picked, of course, I could talk on and on and on about tips for writers, but I picked my top 10 tips for emerging writers. And we can, of course, talk about these more in our Q&A, but I'll just read through which was my journey as well. I mean, everybody's journey to becoming a writer is unique and it's their own and it's very personal. But this kind of speaks to my journey. So the first is to read. I mean, it sounds really obvious, but you'd be surprised at the number of emerging writers who don't read widely. And it's so important to read for pleasure, but also to read for research and to read within the genre that you want to write, but also to branch out and read other things. Because reading widely, you will develop good taste in literature, you'll develop good reading habits, and you will begin to understand really what works on the page, and you can begin to kind of aspire to what you want to emulate. But you can't do that unless you don't read a lot. So that is my number one tip. Number two is to study the craft of writing, you know, whether it's fiction or poetry or nonfiction. You know, writing is a creative process and it should be taken seriously as a craft. And the study of it can be formal, which a lot of you are already doing, but it can also be informal. You know, listening to podcasts, interviews, the experiences of other authors. Three is, this is a hard one, understanding that you won't be good to begin with, and allowing that to happen. You know, when you first start out, there's usually a big gap from where you want to be and where you are. especially, which is really frustrating, especially when you've really developed good reading habits and you have good taste. So you kind of know what you want to write, but you aren't quite there. So you have to really understand that you won't be good at first. Like any new skill, it takes practice. But like any skill, if you do it, if you practice it, you will become better. And really, that's the only way you will become better, is to keep going. But do remember, you won't be good at first, and that's okay. And you must be willing to, number 4 is you must be willing to make mistakes. And as any learner does, you make a lot of mistakes. I mean, I read some of my old manuscripts and I can't even believe how terrible they are. They're really bad, you know, but that's the thing. You have to get there. You have to move through that. So you have to not take yourself too seriously. And when I say make mistakes, I mean also be willing to experiment a little bit. Experiment and not take yourself seriously, because, you know, it's really easy to get frustrated if you kind of thinking that you have to be perfect and, you know, really wrapping yourself up in that. Becoming a writer is very humbling. So number 5 is it's very valuable to join a writer's group of people you trust, whose taste you trust, who can give you feedback on your work. Because, you know, when we get feedback, you know, often in comments, it's hard to hear criticism, but that's what you need. There's no use joining a writer's group for just people who are going to tell you your work is good, because that's not going to help you. You need to join a writer's group who can give you really truthful feedback, constructive criticism. And it is hard to hear, but that's what's going to help your work and improve your work. You know, over the years, I've gotten so much feedback from editors and readers, and I can tell you that it's always, although it hasn't been easy to hear at first, it has always helped my work and always made my work better. And, you know, my belief is that if someone is willing to read my work and give me criticism, it's my job to listen without ego to what they say. And usually what they're saying is right. Number 6 is belong to a community of fellow writers. Is a really great thing to do. You can do this by attending seminars and workshops and festivals, obviously when things get back to normal. It's a great way to meet like-minded authors, and it's also a great way to meet people, publishing professionals, who you can make connections with. So it's good in a practical sense for that, but it's also good for morale and camaraderie with other writers, which you need for number 7, which is understanding that becoming a published author, you will receive rejections. So you need those writing buddy pals to help bolster you up. As I was talking about before, you know, rejection comes with the territory of becoming a published author. Every author, no matter how successful, still receives rejections all the time. But it's especially difficult when you are continuing to try to get published. You will, you know, deal with rejections. And I did it for a decade. I still kept going. So, you know, don't ever feel like, you know, you've failed because you've been rejected by a publisher. That's not it at all. You just got to keep going. So you have to develop a thick skin. Just remember that. Number 8 is, it might sound obvious as well, but you've just got to keep writing. You know, after you've been at the practice for a while and you keep getting feedback and you keep trying and you keep getting rejections, you know, you can feel tempted to give up, and you can give up if you want. But if you do that, you'll never become a published writer. It's simple. You know, if you don't keep writing, you won't publish, and you just have to keep going. So you will be tempted at times, but if that is your goal and that is your dream, you just got to keep going. And I kind of think of it as a boxing match. Sometimes it's like the last man standing. So number 9 is, remember that your voice is unique. Your voice is not like anybody else's. And you might think, oh, you know, somebody already did this, or so-and-so already wrote this, and it isn't original. Don't think that, because the same story can be written hundreds of times in different ways, because each person's perspective is different and your voice is different, and no one else has your voice. So that's what you have, and only you. So, and only you can do it. So just keep that in mind when you need that extra inspiration, that nobody else has your voice and you have something to say in a way that no one else does. Number 10 is very much more practical. You know, when you're ready to submit something, and I assume that you've worked really hard on it, and never submit anything to a publisher unless it's 100% ready, you know. But once you are ready, make sure you do your research on where you're going to send it to, and you know, the basic things like, you know, don't bother sending a poetry submission to a magazine that only publishes prose, for example. Like, make sure you're sending it to somebody who publishes the work that you want to publish, and make sure all publications list their guidelines on their websites. You know, follow the guidelines very carefully. Publishers don't like it when you don't follow these guidelines, and your manuscript will get thrown out immediately if you don't follow the guidelines. So just be very careful about that, and write a very good query letter, which should only be 1 page, and write a very good synopsis, which again should only be 1 page. Now, you need to spend as much time on this query letter and the synopsis, and you can ask me questions about this in Q&A if you like, because it's a kind of very important aspect of getting published. It's the query letter and the synopsis that will be read first, and it's those 2 pieces of paper or screens that determine whether your full submission will even get read. So if those 2, you know, because often I've seen this happen a lot because I worked in the industry, that, you know, people have spent so much time on their manuscript or their submission, and, you know, they haven't put any effort into their query letter and their synopsis. And so it never gets read. So, you know, those things are as important as your manuscript. And you'll figure this out too once you start submitting things. But there is an art to submissions, and they should be taken, you should put a lot of effort into them, the research and the submission process. So I'm going to wish you all good luck with your writing careers. And I'm sure you all have very promising careers ahead of you. And I'm looking forward to reading some of the flash fiction. And I'm looking forward to hearing now about some of your work. And maybe I can talk a little bit more if there was something that you wanted clarification about. But, you know, we're gonna have some Q&A now. But if you want to reach out to me on social media, you can do that on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and I can always clarify anything for you as well. So I'm going to stop screen share, see if I can figure this out, and I'm back on screen. I guess I never went off screen, off camera. And Amar is going to come back and I guess ask me some questions.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for the presentation, Michelle. That was so inspiring, and I hope all the participants also inspired and motivated to be as good writer as you.
Thank you.
And moving on, we are going to the next session, which is question and answer session. For all the participants who want to ask question, you can drop the question on the chat room, and it is okay if you want to ask in Indonesian, because I will be translated and reading it to Michelle, but it will be good if you can write it in English. Okay.
I just saw one there in English, but it disappeared.
Okay.
I think the question was the questioner was about a reading buddy and how does that help you become a better writer.
Oh.
So it helps to have a writing community, other writers as a community, as a group and support. It helps in quite a number of ways. It helps because they are going to give you feedback on your work. You are going to give feedback to their work. So you're going to help each other in practical sense in terms of helping each other with your writing skills. But it's also important for morale that, you know, there's a long journey to becoming a published writer with many bumps in the way. And you will, you know, your reading buddies will you all go at different levels, but they will have experiences that you will learn from, and you will have experiences that you can share with them. You will make different connections in the publishing industry that you can share with your reading friends, and they will do the same with you. It's very important, though, that when you choose a reading group of friends, or they don't even have to be friends, they can just be other writers, that you trust their feedback, because you'll be listening to their critique. So you want to make sure that you trust them, that you trust that they, you know, that they know what you're trying to achieve, and they're also working respectfully on the craft as well. But I've had, you know, I've belonged to lots of different writing associations and writing groups, and, you know, it's just so nice to have that friendship and camaraderie when you're, you know, for the times where things aren't going well, but also to help celebrate the times you are going well as well. So I hope that answers the question. Sorry, the chat disappeared.
It's okay. So that is the first question for about reading buddy, and anybody who has a lot of questions, you can drop it on the chat room. Do not hesitate to ask, because Michelle will be giving you answer, and it will be very useful for to be a good writer.
I'm seeing, okay, so should I read them out?
Yeah, so there is a next question came out. The question is, how can I make a work schedule while writing a paper? Oh, that is the right thing. How can I make a work schedule?
I'm not very good about, you know, there's all kinds of things you can get, you know, in terms of writing schedules and plot lines. Personally, and I think it's a personal thing, how you approach a project, and, you know, different writers find different ways to do this. And I'm somebody who, I can't constrict myself very much. I need to have an outline, and I need to have, you know, give myself a timeline. Often once you are published, you'll be given a much more of a deadline. But I find it too restricting if I give myself too much of a tight schedule. But other people have the opposite experience. They need to have a tight schedule to keep, you know, they have to have a certain word count every day. Like a lot of authors stick to 1,000 words a day. And I can do that sometimes, but I can't, I don't like to be too strict. I like it to be more organic and it to flow a bit more.
Okay, that's the answer. I hope it is answering. Oh, and then came up the new question also from the same person. What would you say is your interesting writing quirk?
I have to bribe myself with things to finish. Like, you know, I'll have a cup of tea and a nice cake or something if I get through the afternoon of working on something. So I think, but I don't know if that's a quirk. I think a lot of writers do that. You know, you kind of bribe yourself with something nice at the end, because it's, you know, it's very kind of frustrating. But I also find I have a dog, and we going out for walks with my dog in nature. And I find I do a lot of my writing actually in my head on these walks. That's where I kind of get, I get a lot of inspiration. And usually when I'm getting to the actual writing of something, I've already thought about it a lot before I actually get to writing it. A lot of writing for me actually happens in my head, not really I'm not one of those writers who sits down and tries to make it up on the page. I've already kind of made it up in my thoughts, and then I transfer it to the page, if that makes sense.
All right. And then to the next question, there are two questions from the same person. The first question is, how do you cope with the writer's block and when you feel there's no idea to write?
I just, as I explained, I will usually go for a walk, or I will move to something that I want, because usually you're writing in novels anyway, usually you're writing different scenes. And so if it's a scene that I'm finding difficult, I will just skip to a different scene that I want to write. And it might be much further ahead in the story, but it doesn't matter. It's just something that I know that I can do. The important thing is just to do something. So I will skip to something that I do want to write. And then usually it's like stepping stones. You know, if I've written that scene that's way in front, it's kind of easier then to get to, from going back to the place that I was stuck, where you can sort of see where you're going. That helps. So writer's block is two ways. I'll get up and I'll actually leave and I'll do something else, or I will kind of just choose something else.
Okay.
And there was a part two of that question, I think.
Okay, and then the next question, have you ever felt insecure or not confident when you are writing, or whether it is...
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I think, absolutely. And it doesn't matter. I heard somebody say, I was watching a similar webinar with this of another writer, and she said something that I always remember, that only bad writers think that they're very good. And so, you know, most writers are insecure about their work and never feel like it's good enough. And, you know, even if after they've worked on it for a long time, and even after it's published, you know, always feel insecure about it. And I'm certainly like that. But also art or writing is very subjective. Not everybody is going to like it. Some people have different tastes. So, and that's okay. And some people haven't liked my books, but thankfully most people have. So it's kind of understanding as well that not everybody is going to like your work, and that's all right.
All right. And moving on to the next question. When did you first realize that you wanted to be a writer?
It was a childhood dream for me to want to be a writer. I always wanted to be a writer, and my mother always encouraged it. So it was a dream that I always had, but that I didn't put into practice until I moved to Canada. But I always wanted to.
Oh, okay. And there's also a question. How did publishing your first book change your process of writing?
It's a great question. You know, it allowed me to take myself more seriously as a writer. And I think that was an important stage in the process for me. And I think that's why I didn't rush into just publishing another YA novel again, because I really realized that, okay, it's important to me to have a career rather than just publishing a book. And I really wanted to then really think about what I wanted to do and take myself seriously as a writer. So I think that's the main thing that changed for me from being an emerging writer to actually being published, was just taking myself more seriously and taking the craft more seriously.
All right. The next question. Where do you get your information or ideas for your books?
I'm very intrigued by nature and the natural world. All my books sort of they intertwine human themes, like I was saying before, like self-empowerment and self-acceptance, with natural themes. And, you know, nature and how we interact with it is very interesting for me. So that's usually where I draw my inspiration from.
All right. That's interesting. We move to the next question. Have you ever felt that you want to stop writing because you can't find any ideas to write?
No, that hasn't happened. You know, and as a writer as well, you know, there's a lot of other writing that goes, a lot of other activities that go along with being a published writer as well. I mean, there's you know, in normal times, there's events and book festivals and seminars and different promotional activities. And so there's different kind of writings. I do a lot of maybe blog visits and Q&As. And this is all writing. These are all, you know, but it's not like novel writing. But I've never kind of wanted to completely stop. I hope that won't happen.
All right. And then the next question, in your opinion, which book you made the most memorable?
Which book of mine, or?
Yes, the book you have made. Which one
Oh,
is most memorable for you?
I don't know. I don't think I can choose. I think they're all quite different. But I guess the one that you're working on is where, you know, where all your focus is. So Music for Tigers is just published this year. So I've been doing a lot of promotion for that book. But Theory of Hummingbirds and Girl of the Southern Sea have just been released in Australia. So I'm kind of going back to doing promotion for those books as well. But it's most exciting to think about the book that you're actually working on. So I guess the writing that I'm absorbed in now is what I hope, and you hope that you get better as you know, I'm hoping that as each book goes along that I'm getting better. I hope anyway.
All right. The next question. Writing can be an emotionally draining and stressful pursuit, but is there any tips for aspiring writers?
It can be, you know, it really can be, I think, but there are a lot of things in life, I think, that can be that way as well. And I think I feel very privileged, very grateful to be a writer. And so that's what I try and remind myself when it's frustrating, that this is a very privileged position, especially writing for children. You know, being able to directly speak to children is a very I don't take it lightly. It's a position where we need to be very responsible. And so, I think there'd be many other jobs that I would feel more frustrated doing. So that's kind of how I talk. That's my self-talk when I feel like I'm too frustrated.
Okay. And there's another one. Do you find it more challenging to write the first book in a series or to write the subsequent novels? Which one do you
The first book is always much easier, because that's where the root of the idea is formed, you know, and to write something after that, I think it's always a bit diluted. The initial idea is going to be a little bit diluted. Usually, I've had a lot of readers asking whether I'm going to write a second book to some of my books, and it's not something I want to do. I would rather put the energy into creating something new. But not to say, I mean, that's just, you know, series are great for readers. I'm not that kind of writer, though, that, you know, who can write really big books and the continuing characters and going on and on and on. That's just kind of not the kind of writing I'm capable of. I'm envious of those who can do it. But the kinds of books I write, I don't think would be very successful as a series.
All right. And then there is another one. Do you have a favorite character that you have written? If so, who is it and what makes them so special for you?
A favorite character that I've written?
Yes.
Oh, it's like you know, picking my favorite child. I don't think I can do that. I have to pass that one and ask, and I'll think about it.
Oh, is it hard? Is it hard to like choose
Well,
from?
it is. I mean, I guess it is. It's like, it is. It's like choosing. They're all equally meaningful, I think. Um, and I think they're for different reasons. The characters that are written might stand out for different qualities, but it's hard just to choose one off the top, of what I think. None of them, when you're writing a character, and you'll know this yourself when you go to, you're really putting a part of yourself into these characters. Sometimes you might have gotten some inspiration from somebody, and added, your own imagination to it, or sometimes it can be completely fictional, and sometimes it can be a little bit autobiographical. So, over the 4 books, I can think of characters who have been a little bit autobiographical, and others not. So it's a hard question. I don't have an absolute favorite, but it's very complex, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is when you're creating a character.
So maybe in conclusion, you really love all of them, all of your characters that you have written.
Of course. Yes, absolutely. And, I've read that, like, J.K. Rowling has backstory on all of her characters, like thousands and thousands of words on backstory of her characters. That's how, how much knowledge she puts into each character.
Okay. And then there's that is such a long question, and then maybe I will read it out for you. It's like a letter for you.
Oh, okay. Shall I find it on the chat here?
Okay, I will be reading it to you.
Oh, I see.
The first time I heard Kaderusman, yes, I know it's such a very popular name. I have just known that you are the daughter of Kang Ebet Kadarusman, so happy to know you. I know your dad was both nice and important. And the first, what motivates you to write, especially for children? And do you specify for children at certain age? And which one do you think attract children more, printed books or the digital ones? And what's your strategy to attract children's interest?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for mentioning my father. Yes, I'm very proud to be Kang Ebet's daughter. Thank you very much. What first motivated me to write for children? I've never, as much as I've wanted to be a writer, it's never occurred to me to be a writer for adults. It's just not something I've ever wanted to do. So I think, I don't know what it is how you choose the kind of voice that you write, but I've never been attracted to writing for adults, only ever for children. Which one do you think attracts children more, printed books or digital? Definitely printed books. I think there's always going to be a place for printed books. I think there's a place for digital as well, but I think printed books will always, something very tactile, especially, for babies as well, and for toddlers. I'm always giving books because it's such a lovely pastime that we can have with children, to read books. And I think printed books will always be immediately more attractive to kids. But I think there is a place for digital reading as well. What specify what children at a certain age? Yes, the middle grade novels I was talking about are for age 8 to 12. So elementary age children. And the last question was, what's my strategy to attract children's interest? For children's writers, we try and often be in this headspace of kids. So we try and think about what will spark that interest. And I think that's a continual thing that we try and do. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like to bring animals and nature into my stories. So even though they're fiction, there is non-fiction components to it, because I know kids are really curious and interested in the natural world. So there's some things I bring into my fiction to try and attract children's interest.
All right. And then, because we don't have much time, so I will be reading you the last question. And the last question is, if you could ask one successful author 3 questions about their writing process or books, what would they be?
probably similar questions that I've been asked tonight. You know, what are your reading habits? What do you do? You know, because I think we're all interested, and because for every writer, it's always different. Like it's intriguing to know the habits of famous writers, you know, what they do when they finish a manuscript, or, you know, how they move through difficult times of writing, because, you know, it's interesting to know about. You might not necessarily do that yourself, but it's just, it's very interesting. So I would, you know, ask the same questions as everybody's been asking me.
All right. Okay. So that was the Q&A session with Michelle Clarisman, and for all the participants who haven't had their question answered, you can contact to Michelle directly throughout her social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And now we are moving on to the closing session for today's webinar, since we are already have our presentation and Q&A done. And let's close today's webinar by saying Alhamdulillah together. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin.
Thank you very much, Michelle. See you later.
Thank you so much. Terima kasih banyak. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good evening.
All right, thank you for all the community from Faculty of Letters for the hard work to hold this webinar, and thank you for all the participants who are coming and pay a lot of attention for today's. And thank you very much for Michelle for amazing experience, story, and knowledge. It is such a pleasure for us for having you here. Hope you always be healthy and have a good day, and also good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, as your moderator, I, Amarski Chonsita, deeply apologize if I did make mistake intentionally or unintentionally throughout today's event. All right, thank you so much for all the attention. See you on the next event with Faculty of Letters. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you, Michelle. See you on the
Bye-bye.
next. Bye. Oh ya, sedikit informasi buat para peserta, sertifikatnya akan di-share via email setelah webinar ini selesai, dan tolong isi itu lembar partisipasi yang sudah di-share di chat room. Terima kasih.
Fakultas Kedokteran, Program Pasca Sarjana, program profesi.
Komen tadi Bapak.
Saat ini UMP terakreditasi B oleh Badan Akreditasi Nasional Perguruan Tinggi. Itu merupakan bukti UMP berkomitmen. Kiprah UMP sebagai lembaga pendidikan tinggi tidak diragukan lagi. Cita-cita untuk semakin mendunia telah dibuktikan dengan banyaknya kerjasama baik di dalam maupun di luar negeri. UMP siap menjawab tantangan global dan tuntutan zaman dengan memberikan sarana dan prasarana yang modern dan berbasis teknologi. Hal ini tentunya mendukung UMP menjadi world-class university. Guna menunjang soft skill akademik dan non-akademik, mahasiswa UMP diberikan pelatihan keahlian, BES, SMART, dan SUCCESS. Mahasiswa juga difasilitasi dengan unit kegiatan mahasiswa atau UKM dan lembaga kemahasiswaan. Dengan mengedepankan kebutuhan pendidikan untuk menjawab tantangan global, UMP hadir sebagai prioritas Anda dalam memilih perguruan tinggi. Jadi tunggu apa lagi? Anda tidak perlu ragu untuk melanjutkan studi di UMP, karena UMP hadir untuk Anda yang muda, unggul, modern, dan islami. Universitas Muhammadiyah Purwokerto telah mencatat secara panjang untuk mencapai unggul, modern, dan islami. Berawal dari Institut Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan IKIP Muhammadiyah Purwokerto, UMP hingga di usia saat ini makin mendunia. UMP beralamatkan di Jalan Raya Dukuhwalu Purwokerto, strategis dari fasilitas publik, baik itu tempat wisata budaya dan sejarah hingga alat transportasi yang memadai. Salah satu pertimbangan memilih UMP tidak lain karena memiliki 11 fakultas dan 38 program studi. Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Fakultas Agama Islam, Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis, Fakultas Teknik dan Sains, Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Psikologi, Fakultas Farmasi, Fakultas Sastra, Fakultas Hukum, Fakultas Ilmu Kesehatan, Fakultas Kedokteran, Program Pasca Sarjana, Program Profesi. Saat ini UMP terakreditasi B oleh Badan Akreditasi Nasional Perguruan Tinggi. Itu merupakan bukti UMP berkomitmen. Kiprah UMP sebagai lembaga pendidikan tinggi tidak diragukan lagi. Cita-cita untuk semakin mendunia telah dibuktikan dengan banyaknya kerjasama baik di dalam maupun di luar negeri. UMP siap menjawab tantangan global dan tuntutan zaman dengan memberikan sarana dan prasarana yang modern dan berbasis teknologi. Hal ini tentunya mendukung UMP menjadi world-class university. Guna menunjang soft skill akademik dan non-akademik, mahasiswa UMP diberikan pelatihan keahlian BES, SMART, dan Sukses. Mahasiswa juga difasilitasi dengan unit kegiatan mahasiswa atau UKM dan lembaga kemahasiswaan. Dengan mengedepankan kebutuhan pendidikan untuk menjawab tantangan global, UMP hadir sebagai prioritas Anda dalam memilih perguruan tinggi. Jadi tunggu apa lagi? Anda tidak perlu ragu untuk melanjutkan studi di UMP, karena UMP hadir untuk Anda yang muda, unggul, modern, dan islami. Universitas Muhammadiyah Purwokerto telah mencatat secara panjang untuk mencapai unggul, modern, dan islami. Berawal dari Institut Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan IKIP Muhammadiyah Purwokerto, UMP hingga di usia saat ini makin mendunia. UMP beralamatkan di Jalan Raya Dukuh Walu Purwokerto, strategis dari fasilitas publik, baik itu tempat wisata budaya dan sejarah hingga alat transportasi yang memadai. Salah satu pertimbangan memilih UMP tidak lain karena memiliki 11 fakultas dan 38 program studi. Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Fakultas Agama Islam, Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis, Fakultas Teknik dan Sains, Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Psikologi, Fakultas Farmasi, Fakultas Sastra, Fakultas Hukum, Fakultas Ilmu Kesehatan, Fakultas Kedokteran, Program Pasca Sarjana, Program Profesi. Saat ini UMP terakreditasi B oleh Badan Akreditasi Nasional Perguruan Tinggi. Itu merupakan bukti UMP berkomitmen. Kiprah UMP sebagai lembaga pendidikan tinggi tidak diragukan lagi. Cita-cita untuk semakin mendunia telah dibuktikan dengan banyaknya kerjasama baik di dalam maupun di luar negeri. UMP siap menjawab tantangan global dan tuntutan zaman dengan memberikan sarana dan prasarana yang modern dan berbasis teknologi. Hal ini tentunya mendukung UMP menjadi world class university. Guna menunjang soft skill akademik dan non-akademik, mahasiswa UMP diberikan pelatihan keahlian, BES, SMART, dan SUCCESS. Mahasiswa juga difasilitasi dengan unit kegiatan mahasiswa atau UKM dan lembaga kemahasiswaan. Dengan mengedepankan kebutuhan pendidikan untuk menjawab tantangan global, UMP hadir sebagai prioritas Anda dalam memilih perguruan tinggi. Jadi tunggu apa lagi? Anda tidak perlu ragu untuk melanjutkan studi di UMP, karena UMP hadir untuk Anda yang muda, unggul, modern, dan islami. Universitas Muhammadiyah Purwokerto telah mencatat secara panjang untuk mencapai unggul, modern, dan islami. Berawal dari Institut Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan IKIP Muhammadiyah Purwokerto, UMP hingga di usia saat ini makin mendunia. UMP beralamatkan di Jalan Raya Dukuh Waluh Purwokerto, strategis dari fasilitas publik, baik itu tempat wisata budaya dan sejarah hingga alat transportasi yang memadai. Salah satu pertimbangan memilih UMP tidak lain karena memiliki 11 fakultas dan 38 program studi. Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Fakultas Agama Islam, Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis, Fakultas Teknik dan Sains, Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Psikologi, Fakultas Farmasi, Fakultas Sastra, Fakultas Hukum, Fakultas Ilmu Kesehatan, Fakultas Kedokteran, Program Pasca Sarjana, Program Profesi. Saat ini UMP terakreditasi B oleh Badan Akreditasi Nasional Perguruan Tinggi. Itu merupakan bukti UMP berkomitmen. Kiprah UMP sebagai lembaga pendidikan tinggi tidak diragukan lagi. Cita-cita untuk semakin mendunia telah dibuktikan dengan banyaknya kerjasama, baik di dalam maupun di luar negeri. UMP siap menjawab tantangan global dan tuntutan zaman dengan memberikan sarana dan prasarana yang modern dan berbasis teknologi. Hal ini tentunya mendukung UMP menjadi world class university. Guna menunjang soft skill akademik dan non-akademik, mahasiswa UMP diberikan pelatihan keahlian BES, SMART, dan SUCCESS. Mahasiswa juga difasilitasi dengan unit kegiatan mahasiswa atau UKM dan lembaga kemahasiswaan. Dengan mengedepankan kebutuhan pendidikan untuk menjawab tantangan global, UMP hadir sebagai prioritas Anda dalam memilih perguruan tinggi. Jadi tunggu apa lagi? Anda tidak perlu ragu untuk melanjutkan studi di UMP, karena UMP hadir untuk Anda yang muda, unggul, modern, dan islami. Universitas Muhammadiyah Purwokerto telah mencatat secara panjang untuk mencapai unggul, modern, dan islami. Berawal dari Institut Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan IKIP Muhammadiyah Purwokerto, UMP hingga di usia saat ini makin mendunia. UMP beralamatkan di Jalan Raya Duku Walu Purwokerto, strategis dari fasilitas publik, baik itu tempat wisata budaya dan sejarah hingga alat transportasi yang memadai. Salah satu pertimbangan memilih UMP tidak lain karena memiliki 11 fakultas dan 38 program studi. Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Fakultas Agama Islam, Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis, Fakultas Teknik dan Sains, Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Psikologi, Fakultas Farmasi, Fakultas Sastra, Fakultas Hukum,